Oh, hey there! Welcome to another edition of Revival from the Bible. And I'm sitting here in my study at the church. And if you were coming to visit me here at the office, you would see every day I am surrounded by books. I love books, and I love just the knowledge and the wisdom that we can learn from things. They're definitely helpful in studying the Bible. And as you look at some of my bookshelves, one question I get sometimes is, Pastor Ben, did you buy a bunch of used library books? And the answer is no, I am that nerdy. I categorize them all and put the labels on according to their Library of Congress numbers, and that's why they all fit into certain sections, right? Over here we've got biblical studies, which gets into commentaries, some on the Gospel of John. Down here, this is this is for free, but if you are wanting to know, hey, what's the best commentary I can get on the Gospel of John? It's this one right here. It's the Pillar New Testament Commentary, and the Gospel of John in that set is by D.A. Carson. You won't find a better commentary for the Gospel of John than that one. But then we get into biblical theology, and you'll see that I have a bunch of systematic theologies that I took home, but they usually take up half of this shelf. And then you kind of get into some Christian living, some more practical things, a bunch of books on marriage up here, a bunch of preaching books down there. And then you get into some other topics that I, have. I mean, here we got Plato's Republic right here. But I mean, that is not where the books end in my office right here. I've got books that I still have not even been able to categorize and put away. And I mean, there's even more, right? You come here, here on my desk, I have a whole catalog from a conference that, I was supposed to go to, but didn't go to because, coronavirus, where, hey, maybe I'll order some more books from here, and then you come over to the other side of the office, and you see over here, I've got a bunch of stacks of books, because you know what people do sometimes? They give me books, which is amazing. So thank you, Greg Wood, but he gave me some more commentaries on the Gospel of John and some other books, and then I have a whole bookshelf over here of books that I've gotten, but haven't been able to categorize with my nerdy Library of Congress label, and they're still sitting over here. So I love books. I love all that we can learn from them, and there's so much wisdom to be gained, but there's something that we have to realize. There is a limit to all of this, right? Books are a gift from God, but none of us are going to be able to answer every question based off of books. None of us are going to be able to, learn all the mysteries that there are in the world, or even all the mysteries that there are in theology. These are questions, there are questions that only God knows the answer to. So why don't you take a seat here across the desk from me, and let's talk about our Bible reading today. What got me to all talking about this book? So let's talk about Romans chapter 11, the end of Romans chapter 11. It says this, starting in verse 33, and going to the end of the chapter. It says, "Oh, the depth of the riches and the wisdom and knowledge of God! How unsearchable are his judgments, and how inscrutable his ways! For who has known the mind of the Lord, or who has been his counselor? Or who has given a gift to him that he might be repaid? For from him and through him and to him are all things. To him be glory forever. Amen." Right? That gives credit to God that, hey, he's ultimately the one that understands everything. He's the one that knows everything, right? And this is interesting because he's talked about some very intense and even heady things in the book of Romans, right? Even chapter 9 is a very debated chapter, talking about election and how does that work. Chapter 11 is a very debated chapter, right? Okay, what about the church and what about Israel? You'll find a lot of discussion about that, I think, amongst really godly, awesome pastors and Bible scholars that have different viewpoints on that. I think one thing that they pretty much all agree on is, hey, there's some kind of future revival coming for the nation of Israel that we see here at the end of chapter 11. And I think even that there's more than that. There's promises that God has made to the people of Israel, even about land and the temple that we're going to see fulfilled in a future millennial kingdom, right? But that can be a debated thing, even amongst godly, Christian, solid people. right? But he gets to the end of all that, and there's that reminder, hey, God knows so much more than we're ever going to know. And he doesn't need our counsel. He's got it figured out. And I think that's something even helpful for us to consider right now in the midst of this whole coronavirus situation, right? I think there's part of us that we want the answers. Like, we want to know this is exactly what we should do. And I know I've got opinions about what would be best in our society, and probably you do too, but I think if we're being honest for a few seconds, we realize there are some complexities that maybe we don't understand. Or even just the bigger question, why is this happening? And what is God trying to accomplish through this? We may never fully understand that, right? I mean, look at the book of Job, right? He gets to the end and he wants to know what's up, and what does God tell him? God basically says, hey, Job, let's just get it straight. I'm God, you're not. And that's that. God tells us why through the book of Job, through the beginning and the backstory, but he never tells Job the answer. All he basically says is, I'm God. Where were you when I created the world, right? Where were you when I did all these amazing things? So I think it's good for us to acknowledge that God is God and we are not, and to worship him for that. And I think there's something for us to find here, even to calm ourselves and to quiet ourselves, remembering, hey, God is in control. I don't have this whole situation figured out, but I know that God does. And so I can worship him for that. And so I want to just briefly, I think tied in with that, just a couple other things that we saw from places this morning. We ended the book of Joshua. And at the end of Joshua, you see him giving this charge to the nation's leaders. And he tells them that, hey, you guys need to be careful. In Joshua 23:6, he says, therefore, be very strong to keep and to do all that is written in the book of the law of Moses, turning aside from it neither to the right hand nor to the left, that you may not mix with these nations remaining among you, or make mention of the names of their gods, or swear by them, or serve them, or bow down to them. But you shall cling to the Lord your God, just as you have done this day. And there's this idea of clinging to God, of running to him. And I think we see that one last place that we'll look this morning. We also read from Mark chapter 3, Jesus choosing the 12 disciples. But I want to end in Psalm 50 today. We're in the middle of this psalm. And remember from yesterday, it's talking about God being the judge. And even he gets into their face a little bit saying, hey, you're bringing me all these sacrifices. Do you think that's what I really want? And he starts to tell them what it is that he really wants in verses 14 and 15. He says, offer to God a sacrifice of thanksgiving and perform your vows to the Most High and call upon me in the day of trouble. I will deliver you and you shall glorify me. What does God want from us? Well, he kind of explains it. He wants us to thank him when he provides, and then he wants us to look to him when we need him to provide, to call on him in the day of trouble so that he will deliver us, and then we will thank him and glorify him again, right? There's a lot that we don't understand about what's going on in the world, but let's focus on what God has made clear to us, and that's that we should be clinging to him. And what does that practically look like today? Hey, you need to thank God for the ways that he is providing for you, and the things that you're concerned about, the things that you are troubled by, you need to call upon God in the day of trouble. So as we wrap up today, right, and we think, man, all the things that we could learn and all the things that we could know and all the books in the world, right? Well, even Solomon warns us in Ecclesiastes, hey, of books, there could be no end, and that doesn't necessarily mean wisdom. Let's focus on what we do know, and let's make sure, hey, today, I'm going to thank God for the ways he provides to me, and I'm going to call on him. So even as we wrap up, I want to encourage you, what are the things you can thank God for today? And what are the things that are concerning you? Maybe you're doing this in the morning, it's a new day. What are the troubles you have concerning today or this week? And call upon God and ask for his help. So why don't you go do those things now, and I'll see you again tomorrow on Revival from the Bible.